What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, I'm going over one of the most frequently asked questions that I get, which is, why did you start your fitness journey? I get asked this question on probably every Q&A that I post on Instagram, and I usually try to keep the answer very condensed, just given the fact that I can't tell the whole story on an Instagram story. But the actual story behind why I started is pretty long. So let's get into it. I have my phone here because a while ago I actually did post, you can't even see, I actually did post a blog about it, and I want to make sure that I stay on track for this. All my life I had been an athlete. I played soccer from the age of 4. My mom was a tennis player when she was younger. My dad played either professional or semi-pro soccer. He was a goalie. Fortunately, I did not get any height genes, and I don't have a vertical, so goalie was just not in it for me. But I was a utility player. I played almost every position except center mid. I could not play that for some reason, but I played on a ton of different travel teams and club teams and my school team. I was always practicing, like even in off season, it was about 3 days a week. Tournaments, maybe twice a month, probably. Playing soccer in college was one of those things that me and my teammates never really thought about as being like an option. It was always something that we just kind of grew up believing that we were gonna do. And obviously looking back on it now, it is such a privilege to be able to play a sport in college and such an honor to be a part of a team. But back then it was one of those things that was just kind of expected of us. So I did end up playing in college. Throughout most of my career, I was always little Kiri. I was 5 foot nothing, maybe. I think I was like 4'11" up until like my junior year of high school. I was 105 pounds. I was a size 00 in jeans. I was tiny. But on the bright side of that, I was also very, very fast, and I loved that. I loved what my body could do. I loved how it helped me play the sport that I loved. The problem was that although I was very tiny, I was also really physical. I was one of the more physical players, and some coaches liked that about me and some coaches hated it. But that was what I did. So since I was so small and I was playing this contact sport, my dad got a little worried, you know, as I started to get up into like high school ball, moving into college ball. He was really nervous that my height and my weight were gonna be a disadvantage when I was going against these girls that were like bigger and stronger than me. So he ended up signing me up for this strength and conditioning facility program thing. And that was kind of my first taste of what weightlifting was. And it was super, super basic. I remember going, I was doing very minimal things, very light goblet squats, maybe some bicep curls, lunges, just the basic exercises to kind of get a good foundation laid out for me. I ended up stopping the strength and conditioning sessions just because I personally, at that time, as a 9th grader in high school, just really didn't like them. I just felt like I wasn't getting much benefit from them. So we ended up just kind of calling it quits for a while. Sophomore year, I remember, was kind of the year that everyone around me really started to mature. All the girls were kind of growing into their bodies, and all the guys were too, and I was still kind of just stuck at this very tiny 00 girl. And you know, that was also when I noticed that having a bigger butt was a thing. I noticed that that was like a trend, and I kind of just accepted for myself that that was never gonna be me, just because I saw everyone around me, and then I looked at me and I was like, there's no way. I'm so tiny. But I was 100% okay with that. I totally accepted it. Like I said, it allowed me to be an amazing soccer player. Junior year, I ended up going on hormonal birth control, which did kind of change my body composition. I ended up gaining like 30 pounds. I noticed that one, I wasn't able to eat the way I used to. I used to be able to eat absolutely whatever I wanted without any consequence whatsoever, other than maybe feeling a little bit crappy afterwards. But I noticed that I was actually starting to kind of put on weight. And that weight distribution went to like my hips and my butt. I started getting a little bit of attention for that. Obviously when you go from a 00 jean size to a 6 in a matter of a month or two, it was shocking to me. All of a sudden I had this body that I had never had before, and while part of me was self-conscious, the other part really liked it. The other part completely embraced it. Moving on to a little bit further in my junior year, I was at this tournament. It was my favorite tournament by far. We loved it so much the year before, so we went this next year, my junior year. It was the last game of the tournament, and like I said, I was a very physical player. So I was in the game, someone had the ball. I came up and tackled them completely legally. I want to point that out. It was a legal tackle. I got the ball and I was dribbling away. The girl came up and retaliated. She hit me from my left side, kind of like at a weird angle. When I got hit, I came up and then I landed right on my right glute. I got up and I kind of was walking a little weird. I noticed something was off. I wasn't in like pain, but I just felt like I couldn't walk normally. It felt like very stiff. I didn't have any mobility. I felt like my running was off. My walking gait was off. Everything was just kind of weird. And I remember saying something after the game to my dad, and I was like, I don't know what that was, but my hip is just, it feels weird now. I kept an eye on it. It wouldn't go away. We went to a ton of doctors, got ton of different wrong diagnoses before we finally came across this one doctor who was a hip specialist, and he sent me for tests. He sent me for an MRI, and I had to get iodine injected into my hip, which was the worst experience ever. Got the results back, and he looked at them and said that I had torn my labrum, which is the cartilage that is in your hip. So if this is your femur bone, this is your hip, goes like this, the cartilage is like in here, and I tore that out. So that was why I was having such like weird feeling when I was walking. It felt stiff, it felt like it was catching. I felt like my range of motion just wasn't there, and he basically told me that, you know, I could get it operated on. It is a 9-month recovery, or I could not get it operated on, go do some rehab, go do some strength work, and continue out my season. And he recommended that I didn't get the surgery because it was my junior year of high school, which was like prime recruiting year for colleges. That was the year that colleges could actually reach out and talk to you. And he really didn't think that I had any reason to like bring that to a halt. So I never got the operation. I ended up going back to the strength and conditioning coach that I had been at previously my freshman year. He looked at me, the PT on site looked at me, they put together a program, and that was kind of my first very consistent program with like lifting. That was my first experience in actually like staying with the program. So I continued there. I got a pretty good basic understanding for what I had to do and how I had to lift. And I started to realize that, hey, lifting weights, like I like how this makes me look. And I noticed like my body was just a lot more firm, my stomach was flatter, my glutes were a little bigger. I just had like more going on, a little more muscle. Granted, it was only for a couple months, but I really liked how I felt, and I kind of became obsessed with wanting to do my own thing. I would go in there and I would do things that like weren't on my program, and my coach would be like, hey, you can't do that, like you gotta do the program we give you. So I got a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, I got like a little bit annoyed. It was a 30-minute drive to this place to do these programs that I just felt like at the time were like very repetitive, and I wanted to go do what I wanted to do. So my senior year, I played school soccer in the fall, and then I got my first gym membership at Planet Fitness right after the season was over. And I was obsessed with training legs. I still am. I still love training legs, but I was obsessed with like growing my legs and growing glutes, and that's just what I wanted to do. So when I would go into Planet Fitness, I would train legs every time, which was not good. Like 5 days a week, I was training legs. I was doing the same exercises. I remember I would do goblet squats, I would do leg press, hamstring curls, I would do some glute bridges, just body weight. do some like Smith machine stuff, some step ups, just like the most like basic things that I knew at the time. I would even include like the Stairmaster in like the middle of my workout just because I didn't know any better. I thought that that was part of it. So I was kind of experimenting there, but now I look back on it and I'm like, man, I was lifting legs 5 days a week. I had practice 2 to 3 days a week, and then twice a month I was going to these tournaments on the weekends. I don't know how I didn't hurt myself. Like, I mean, I look back still to this day and I'm like, girl, what were you thinking? But it's like a live and learn experience. You learn through your journey. So that was just one of the things that I had to learn very quickly. So I was getting very frustrated with the fact that I wasn't seeing progress. Shocker. I wasn't seeing growth in my legs because I was training them so often and overusing them. It was too much going on. I started to believe that like cardio was the enemy. For some reason, my boyfriend at the time had told me that like he hated running because he lost so much muscle when he ran. And so I got this in my head that like, hey, cardio is making me not look the way I want to look. And soccer is cardio, so maybe I should just limit that and just focus on the lifting. And I kind of started to like dislike going to practices. I started to dislike running around. I really liked lifting, and I started not to like playing so much. But besides soccer practices, I pretty much cut cardio from my workout routine, and I continued to perform the same lifts every day. As an athlete, you're taught that you need to like overload on carbs, especially the night before like a big game or a big tournament. You have like those pasta parties and carbo loading and all that. So in my head, I was like, okay, well, if this is helping me perform, then that's what I should do in the gym. Just eat a bunch of carbs. And that was what I had drilled into my head. That was what I believed was gonna help me get results I needed. Not that carbs are the enemy. I wanna preface that. Carbs are not the enemy, but when you were like me and that was all you were eating because you believed that that was the key to growth and how I wanted to look, I looked very bulky and very sloppy and just kind of like sluggish. That's really the gist of it. Throughout the next year, I continued my fitness journey. I ended up switching after a couple months at Planet Fitness to Gold's Gym. I wanted to start experimenting with like a barbell. Planet Fitness didn't have that. They didn't have a lot of like the free weights. They were lacking a lot of things that I needed. And so I got a membership at Gold's and I continued on with my fitness journey. So senior year ended. I had that summer to start preparing for college soccer. I had committed to a school to play and they sent out my program to prepare for preseason, which was crazy. But anyway, I was lifting 6 days a week. Every other day I was out at the field conditioning and doing skill work. So I was there for like 3 hours just running and playing and just doing so much. I was so active that summer and I still wasn't eating right. I was barely eating enough to be able to maintain that level of physical activity I was at. And looking back, I really don't think I ever gave myself an actual rest day. If I wasn't lifting, I was running. And if I wasn't running, I was lifting. And most days I would do both on the same day. So I might have been in the best like cardiovascular shape of my life, but I still felt like I just didn't look good. I was very frustrated with how I looked. My weight didn't change. I was still like about 130. But my physique, I really didn't like it. I just didn't feel good. I decided to start trying out macros for the first time. When I first came across this fitness thing, the first girl that I had seen on Instagram was Katie Hearn, and I noticed that she had tracked her macros. So I researched macros, I tried to figure out what it was, what to do, and I decided to give it a go. Frankly, I didn't really know how it worked. I understood the macro part of it, but for some reason, I just had it ingrained in my head that I could only eat like chicken and rice for every meal. And that's definitely not the case. And I know that now, but needless to say, like that didn't last long. I maybe did 2 or 3 days tracking my macros before I was like, this isn't sustainable for me. I can't do this. I can't come home after working out this much and be starving and have to eat chicken and rice just plain that doesn't have any taste to it. Granted, yeah, there are some times that I'm gonna have to eat those meals, but I was eating it like 3 times a day, every day, and it was unenjoyable. So I went back to my original eating habits, which was just eat whatever I felt like, eat whenever I was hungry and continued to really dislike the way I looked. So fast forward to college, ended up hurting myself, so I wasn't able to actually play in the season, but I was still able to lift. I was still able to go to the gym and lift, but all forms of cardio were cut from my program, which honestly at that time I thought was amazing because I was like, yes, I can just focus on building muscle. I wasn't lifting very heavy. I was still doing the same exercises and I was eating like complete crap. Guys, college, when you go to the dining hall, as you know, or if you don't know, now you do, it is just an endless buffet of unhealthy, an endless buffet of whatever you want. I had 3 meal swipes a day, meaning I had to go during a certain amount of time in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And if I missed one of those, like I didn't eat that meal. And I didn't have a kitchen in my dorm, so I kind of relied on that dining hall for food. So when I would go in, like any college student does when they're hungry, I ate absolutely anything and everything, especially carbs. All carbs. I was eating pizza, I was eating sushi, which wasn't actually like real sushi, it was dining hall sushi. Like just unhealthy like sandwiches and burgers and things like that, and just very unhealthy foods, but a main focus on like I would always get pasta all the time, every meal pasta, because that's what I thought. So I was doing 0 form of cardio, I was doing half-assed workouts, eating like complete crap, and had this like endless buffet of crap food. I noticed my body change quicker than I had ever noticed my body change. I actually felt like for the first time in my life that I was actually, like I had actually gained a substantial amount of weight. I had no definition, like no muscle definition. I was so sluggish. And I remember like I didn't even notice it really until I came home for winter break. I was getting ready for work and I had this pair of jeans that I had always worn to work just because I didn't really care about them that much, but they fit well enough that I could wear them to go. So I remember I put them on and they did not fit how they fit before. It's not like they didn't fit, but they were just not flattering. They used to be, but they weren't anymore. And I remember being so upset. I was so distraught about how I felt in those jeans, but I kind of just brushed it off, went to work, and I came home and my mom said something about kind of noticing that I was looking a little bigger, and that kind of just destroyed me. I mean, I had it in my head that like maybe that was a possibility, but I didn't want to believe it. And when I heard her say that, I was just like, wow, my body really did change. The number on the scale didn't, but my body did. So from there, I decided to start taking this more seriously. I did more serious lifts, I did cardio, I stopped slacking, I started eating intuitively. So I would eat when I was hungry. I would listen to what my body was craving. So if I really, really wanted like a piece of cake or like a cookie or something, I would have one and then that was it. I wouldn't overload. I would eat healthy things. I had healthy options. I started, kind of looking at my protein intake a little more, focusing a little bit less on the carb bloating thing, but it still wasn't where it needed to be. It was a start, but it still, I wasn't there yet. So I ended up transferring colleges. I just wasn't happy at my first one, and I played soccer at my new school. I got in this really bad habit of like looking in the mirror and picking out the things that I didn't like about myself. And it started off kind of innocently, like looking in the mirror and thinking like, oh man, like maybe I'll just work on this, or maybe I'll train this tomorrow, or maybe I'll do an extra day of this. And kind of progressed to the point where I was just very nasty to myself. I would look in the mirror and like hate what I saw. I would pick out every little thing. I would be so frustrated and cry and get stressed and kind of just break down because I hated what I saw. And it was just me picking out the little things like, oh, my stomach wasn't flat enough, or my butt wasn't big enough, or I had like no muscle definition, something like that. Like it was, I would look in the mirror and I would just break down. And that was every day, like every day, multiple times a day. I was coming home from class or coming home from the gym, and the first thing I would do when I got into my dorm room is take my stuff off, like my backpack or whatever I had on me, close the door and like look at the mirror and pick out the things I did not like and work myself up over it. And it was just mentally exhausting. I had such bad body dysmorphia. Like, I feel so bad for my past self and what I put her through, because that was just insane to do. I mean, 5, 6, 7 times a day. April 2016 was the month that I decided enough was enough. I had spent the whole semester hating my body. I mean, I'd spent the past couple years hating my body, but this semester in particular was the one that I had just gotten to a breaking point. I was tired of crying after looking in the mirror. I was tired of constantly checking to see if I looked good enough. I remember one night in April, I was getting ready to go out with some friends, and I didn't drink, and I still don't really drink. I just liked to go out and hang out with them. And I put on a crop top and a pair of leggings. And I looked in the mirror and I lost it. I hated what I saw. I was not happy. I started crying, and I remember I walked over to where I stored like my snacks. Most of them were healthy, but it was just Girl Scout cookie season. So I got a box of the shortbread cookies, which in my opinion aren't even the good ones. Like, Thin Mints are the way to go. But anyway, I got a box of shortbread cookies and I devoured the entire box. Partially out of frustration, partially at the fact that I still believed in the back of my head that carbo loading was gonna get me where I wanted to be. And I thought that since I did not look good, that was the answer. And I devoured it, wiped up my tears, and went out. And I looked at the pictures the next day and I was like, they don't even look bad. Like, I didn't look like what I wanted to, but I didn't look bad, and I didn't look how I thought I looked in the mirror. And I was relieved, but I was also just really tired of the same routine, because that was just a constant thing for me. I mean, granted, that was a breaking point, but that kind of thing happens multiple times a day, almost every day. I, basically said enough was enough. I was an exercise science major. I knew what I needed to do. I knew enough about the gym. My workouts were fine. I knew how to track my macros, and I knew not to do it like the time I did before. And I knew all of this, but I was just too scared to start, because in my head I was like, okay, this isn't something that you do short term. This isn't something that you do for a couple months, get the way you want to look, and then go back to how you were. This is something that if I do it, I have to stick with it for the entire duration of this journey. But that's what scared me. I felt like I was gonna lose my freedom. I didn't know any better. I just thought that that's what was gonna happen. So that night, I kind of planned everything that I wanted to do out. I calculated out some macros. I wrote workouts for the week. I was like dead set on what I wanted to do. And the next morning I did it. I downloaded MyFitnessPal. I started tracking everything, which was very hard, especially when you're eating in a dining hall, you don't have a scale. I would send pictures to my mom. I look back on this and laugh now, but I would send pictures to my mom of my plate, and I would say, hey, what do you think this is? Like, how much do you think this chicken weighs? Or how much of this carb do you think I have? Because she was a chef when she was younger, so I just thought maybe she could help, and that's how I tracked my food. And it was a start, and I felt like I had control over my body. I felt like I had control over what went in it. I remember watching like vlogs on YouTube, because I had already followed Katie. I discovered Nikki, I discovered like all those people who kind of just started with the fitness industry. And I discovered Shark, which was where I got my first pair of workout leggings ever, and I still have them to this day. They're kind of old and beat up, but I still have them, and followed all their athletes, and that was kind of how I started to kind of move along. They were sharing their journeys, and it really inspired me to learn as much as I could and share mine. So that's when I made my page, was a year later. So I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say ever since that day everything's been perfect, because I made mistakes along the way. I had to learn from them. I had trial and errors, and I faced a lot of obstacles, but I finally become confident and happy and I just feel good in my own skin, which was something that 2016 and prior me just never had the opportunity to feel. And I'm forever grateful for that little epiphany of self-worth that I had in my dorm room that night. I'm sorry to my past self that it took me that long, but it was the best decision that I have ever made. My goal is to be able to help and inspire others. I mean, everyone deserves to be happy in their own skin. So the two main things that I think that someone can take away from my fitness journey and how I started is, one, don't be afraid to start. That was my biggest fear, was that if I started, this was something that I was gonna have to stick with, and I was afraid of that. And I was also afraid to start because it just seemed like such a hassle. I mean, all these people who I was seeing on social media had been doing it for years at that point, and they looked so good. I just knew that like it was gonna be such a long process, and I didn't wanna start. But guys, it is the simplest decision that you can make for yourself, and one of the best ones. Just start somewhere, start anywhere. It doesn't matter where you start. And the second piece of advice is to love yourself at all stages. Once I started actually being serious about my tracking and my exercise, I don't really remember ever once comparing my body to anyone else's. I was just focused on me, which was really good for me. Don't do what I did, and don't beat yourself up over the phase that you're in. Don't try to rush anything. Don't get frustrated. Just love yourself in the phase that you're in. Love your body for what it can do and what it's allowing you to do, and progress from there, because you're gonna look back in a couple years and you're gonna see how much progress you've made, and you're gonna be like, wow. And there's absolutely, no reason to hate your body for that. It's doing what it does. The journey is just, it's amazing. I wish everyone could experience it, because it's, one, led me to be the most confident person I can be. It's led me to meet great people like all of you, and interact with all of you, and help other people who need it. And honestly, I'm so grateful for everything that this journey has brought me. So that is the long, drawn out answer to the question why I started my fitness journey, and I really hope that you guys liked it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions on what you want to see next, or hit me up on Instagram as usual. Here's the @ I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next time.